Hello and welcome to Languages with Dr. L. In today's video, I'm going to help prepare you for the Latin Praxis exam number 5601. Alright, so what is the Latin Praxis exam? Well, it's going to cost $130. It takes about 2 hours. It's for teachers of elementary and secondary levels that want to teach Latin. And the dates and score requirements are going to vary by state, so check out the ETS site for that. Alright, so in today's video, we're just going to run through the exam format. There's 4 different sections. There's 120 selected responses, and in the 4 sections, the topics are grammar, reading comprehension, Roman civilization, pedagogy, and professional matters. So in today's video, just use it as a checklist. I'm just going to run through the topics that are going to be covered and see if you're familiar with these items or not. Alright, so in the grammar section, section 1, it makes up 40% of your exam score. There's going to be 48 multiple choice questions, and some themes that you might need to know about are ablative and absolute, indirect statement, accusative, subordinate clause, nominative, deponent, periphrastic, inflectional forms, and declension. Again, just use these lists as a checklist to see if you're familiar with these items or not, if you understand these, or if you need to go back and study them a little bit more. Alright, continuing on with the grammar, make sure that you're familiar with the agreement of adjectives and nouns. And for the noun cases, be sure that you know parative, genitive, and dative of purpose. Also be familiar with the verb conjugations, the regulars and irregulars. Alright, continuing with the grammar, prepositions, accusative versus ablative, degrees of comparison, adjectives and adverbs, and idioms, mihi placet, opus est, and other common idiomatic expressions. Also be familiar with the verb tenses and infinitives, indicative versus subjunctive, and sentences, coordination versus subordination. Alright, also make sure that you're familiar with compound verbs, diminutives, stems, and affixes, compose and revise sentences, and also be familiar with the syntax of Latin versus English. Alright, some other grammar concepts are etymology, Latin versus English, and some poetry concepts, dactylic hexameter and scansion. Alright, up next we're just going to do a quick run through and a checklist of the reading comprehensions section. So this is going to make up 30% of your exam score. There's going to be 36 multiple choice questions. Be familiar with common authors, vocabulary, and terminology associated with reading. And a helpful hint here is to preview the questions first, then read the article, then go back and answer the questions. That's going to make the most effective and efficient use of your time. Another helpful hint is to create a list of words that are new to you while you're reading, and then study those, because reading comprehension comes down to about 90% vocabulary knowledge. Alright, continuing on with reading. Be familiar with vocabulary and authors, and prose and poetry that are common to Latin literature, and also be able to tell meaning from context, like fere, does it mean to carry or permit or assert? Depending on the context, you'll be tested on that. And from reading, they're going to test you on if you can infer from what is implied, and then also translation, literal versus idiomatic expressions. And then also be familiar with these literary devices, simile, anaphora, litotes, polyptoton, ascendenton, chiasmus, personification, apostrophe. Up next is Roman civilization, section 3. This makes up 20% of your exam score. There's going to be 24 selected responses. Some themes are history, literature, myths. And on to Roman civilization. Make sure that you're familiar with the literature, Greek antecedents, poetry, and major works and authors. Also be familiar with the products like architecture, clothing, food and drink. And in Roman civilization, be familiar with Greco-Roman myths and deities, Greek influence, and modern world connections. Also, for the history, be familiar with the founding of Rome, the Punic Wars, and the Republic to Empire. Also be familiar with daily life like family structure, household and slavery, and education and games. All right, up next is geography. Be familiar with the Forum Romanum, Via Appia, Gaul, Carthage, Byzantium. And under religion, be familiar with polytheism, ritual sacrifice, and laures et penates. And for government, be familiar with civic life, sercem honorum, and the legal system. Right, up next is the last section, section 4, pedagogy, and makes up 10% of your exam score. And there's 12 multiple choice questions. You're going to be tested on teaching approaches, teaching reading, and standards. So be familiar with the different standards that go along with teaching Latin. Be familiar with common textbooks that are used in the classroom, and be familiar with how reading aloud can be incorporated into the classroom. Okay, as far as teaching approaches goes, be familiar with the grammar translation method, reading in context, and using oral method in the classroom. All right, in class, be familiar with how English and Latin grammar have similarities and differences. Be familiar with then how Latin text can be used to teach in the classroom, and also be familiar with pronunciation of Latin. All right, that's what I've got for you today. Gracias, tibi. Up next, you may enjoy my World Languages Pedagogy Praxis exam video number 5841.